The sea was restless that night. I stood on the jagged cliffs overlooking the village, the wind whipping my hair into a frenzy as the waves roared below. The air smelled of salt and something else, something electric like the moment before lightning strikes. The villagers called it the breath of the gods, but I knew better. The gods didn't breathe, they commanded. And tonight they were furious. My name is Ayla. I've lived in this coastal village all my life, though I've never felt like I truly belonged. The others whispered about me when they thought I couldn't hear. They said I was strange, that I had a way with the sea that no mortal should. They weren't wrong. I could feel the storm before it came. It wasn't just the dark clouds gathering on the horizon, or the way the gulls fled inland. It was something deeper, something in my bones. The sea spoke to me in a language I didn't fully understand, its whispers carried on the wind. Tonight its voice was a scream. Ayla. I turned to see Kairos hurrying toward me, his cloak billowing behind him like the wings of a crow. He was an outsider like me, though his strangeness came from his mind rather than his blood. A storyteller and historian, Kairos had traveled the world collecting tales of gods and monsters. He'd arrived in our village a year ago, drawn by rumors of a girl who could calm the waves with a touch. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, his voice sharp with concern. "This storm, it's not natural." I didn't answer. Instead, I pointed to the horizon, where the sky churned like a cauldron of ink. The waves rose higher than I'd ever seen, their crests glowing faintly with an eerie light. It was as if the sea itself was alive, thrashing against some unseen enemy. "It's them," I said quietly. "Poseidon and Susanoo. They're fighting," Kairos frowned. "The Greek god of the sea and the Japanese god of storms. What would they have to fight about?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But it's more than a squabble. This feels personal. As if in response, a deafening crack split the air and a bolt of lightning struck the water, illuminating the chaos below. For a moment, I thought I saw two figures standing atop the waves, their forms towering and terrible. One wielded a trident that crackled with energy, while the other brandished a sword that seemed to draw the storm itself into its blade. Then the light faded and they were gone. "We need to get back to the village," Kairos said, grabbing my arm. "If the gods are truly at war, we're not safe here." I let him pull me away, but my mind was elsewhere. The sea's whispers had grown louder, more insistent. They weren't just warnings, they were a call. Something was waiting for me out there, something I couldn't ignore. By the time we reached the village, the storm had begun in earnest. The wind howled through the narrow streets, tearing roofs from houses and sending debris flying. The villagers huddled together in the square, their faces pale with fear. "Ayla," a voice called. It was old man Hiroshi, the village elder. He stumbled toward me, his eyes wide with desperation. "You have to do something. The sea, it's going to destroy us." I wanted to tell him I couldn't, that I was just a fisherwoman with a strange gift. But the look in his eyes stopped me. He believed in me, even if I didn't believe in myself. "I'll try," I said, though the words felt hollow. I made my way to the shore, Kairos close behind. The waves crashed against the rocks, sending spray high into the air. I closed my eyes and reached out with my mind, trying to calm the sea as I had done so many times before. But this time it didn't listen. Instead, I felt a pull, a force drawing me toward the water. Before I could resist, a wave surged forward, sweeping me off my feet. I tumbled into the icy depths, the world around me a blur of darkness and foam. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a stretch of sand, the storm raging above me. Beside me were two objects that hadn't been there before. A trident forged of shimmering bronze and a sword adorned with jewels that glowed like the heart of a storm. I reached for them, my fingers trembling. As soon as I touched the trident, a surge of power shot through me, filling my veins with fire. The sword was no different, its energy crackling like lightning. "What are these?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Kairos appeared at my side, his face pale. "They're divine weapons," he said. "But why would they be here? And why would they respond to you?" I didn't answer. The sea's whispers had returned, louder now, more urgent. They spoke of a forgotten pact, a war between gods and a destiny I couldn't escape. The storm above us intensified, the waves rising higher than ever. Somewhere out there, Poseidon and Susanoo were still fighting. their rage threatening to tear the world apart. And I was the only one who could stop them. The storm raged on, but the beach where I lay was eerily calm, as if the gods themselves had carved out a sanctuary for me. The trident and sword beside me pulsed with energy, their light casting flickering shadows on the sand. I could feel their power coursing through me, a strange and unfamiliar warmth that both comforted and terrified me. Kairos knelt beside me, his face pale but determined. "Ayla, we need to move. This place, it's not safe." I nodded, though my legs felt like they were made of stone. The whispers of the sea had grown louder, more insistent, and I could no longer ignore them. They weren't just sounds, they were images, flashes of memory that didn't belong to me. I saw towering waves, a temple submerged in the depths, and two figures locked in battle, one wielding a trident, the other a sword. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Kairos frowned. "Hear what? The sea, it's speaking to me." He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "What is it saying?" I hesitated, trying to make sense of the flood of images and sensations. "It's calling me. There's something I need to find, something beneath the waves." Kairos's expression darkened. "If the sea is calling you, then we have no choice but to answer. But we can't do this alone. We need help." "Help from who?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The spirits of the sea," he said. "They've guided mortals before. If anyone can help us navigate what's coming, it's them." We returned to the village, the storm still raging overhead. The villagers had taken shelter in the temple, their prayers to Poseidon and Susanoo mingling into a desperate cacophony. Old man Hiroshi met us at the door, his face etched with worry. "Did you calm the storm?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Not yet," I admitted. "But we're going to try something else. We need to speak to the spirits of the sea." Hiroshi's eyes widened. "The spirits? But no one has summoned them in generations. It's too dangerous. We don't have a choice," Kairos said firmly. "The gods are at war, and Ayla is the only one who can stop them. But she needs guidance." Hiroshi hesitated, then nodded. "There's an old ritual, but it requires a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "A piece of yourself," Hiroshi said. "Something precious. The spirits demand a token of your sincerity." I thought for a moment, then reached into my pocket and pulled out a small seashell. It was a gift from my mother, the only thing I had left of her. I'd carried it with me every day since her death, a reminder of the woman who had taught me to love the sea. "Will this do?" I asked, holding it out. Hiroshi nodded solemnly. "It will." The ritual took place on the shore, beneath a sky torn apart by lightning. Hiroshi led us to a circle of stones, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of wind and water. He placed the seashell in the center, then stepped back, his hands raised in supplication. "Spirits of the sea," he intoned, his voice carrying over the roar of the storm. "We call upon you to guide us. Ayla, daughter of the waves, seeks your wisdom. Hear her plea and show her the path." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air grew still, the storm's fury muted as if the world itself was holding its breath. The seashell began to glow, its light spreading outward until it enveloped the circle. A figure emerged from the light, her form shimmering like the surface of the water. She was beautiful and terrible all at once, her eyes deep and ancient, her hair flowing like seaweed in the current. "Ayla," she said, her voice echoing with the sound of waves crashing against rocks. "You have called and I have answered. But know this, the path you seek is fraught with peril. The gods are prideful and their war threatens to destroy all that you hold dear." "I know," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "But I have to try. Please show me the way." The spirit studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. To find the truth, you must journey to the Temple of the Tides, a place hidden beneath the waves. There, you will learn of the ancient pact that once bound the seas together. But beware, the temple is guarded by the Leviathan, a creature of immense power and cunning. Only by proving your worth can you gain entry." "How do I prove my worth?" I asked. The spirit's gaze softened. "By embracing who you are. You are not just a mortal, Ayla. You are the bridge between worlds, the child of two pantheons. The sea recognizes you, but you must recognize yourself. Before I could respond, the spirit began to fade, her form dissolving into mist. The light from the seashell dimmed, and the storm's fury returned with a vengeance. "We need to go," Kairos said, his voice urgent. "Before the storm gets worse." I nodded, clutching the trident and sword tightly. The Temple of the Tides. It sounded like a place from a legend, not something I could actually find. But the spirit's words echoed in my mind. "You are the bridge between worlds." As we made our way to the docks, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a story much larger than myself. The sea's whispers had become a roar, and I knew there was no turning back. The boat was small and battered, but it would have to do. Kairos and I pushed it into the water, the waves threatening to swallow it whole. As we climbed aboard, I glanced back at the village, its lights flickering like stars in the storm. "Are you ready?" Kairos asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. I took a deep breath, the weight of the trident and sword in my hands grounding me. As ready as I'll ever be. We set sail, the storm raging around us. Somewhere beneath the waves, the Temple of the Tides awaited, and with it, the answers I so desperately sought. But first, we would have to face the Leviathan. The storm above us was a distant rumble as Kairos and I descended into the depths, the trident and sword glowing faintly in the dark water. The sea had opened a path for us, a swirling current that carried us deeper and deeper, away from the chaos above. The pressure of the water should have crushed us, but the artifacts protected us, their light forming a bubble of air around our bodies. The deeper we went, the quieter the world became. The storm's fury faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The water was clear and cold, and the only sound was the rhythmic pulse of the trident in my hand, as if it were alive. "Do you feel that?" Kairos asked, his voice echoing strangely in the water. I nodded. The whispers of the sea had returned, but they were different now, deeper, more resonant. They guided us, pulling us toward something vast and ancient. "The Temple of the Tides," I said, though I wasn't sure how I knew. "It's close." As if in response, the water around us began to shimmer, and the faint outline of a structure emerged in the distance. It was massive, its spires reaching toward the surface like the fingers of a drowned giant. The temple was made of coral and stone, its surface covered in intricate carvings that glowed with a soft blue light. But between us and the temple was the Leviathan. It was impossible to see the creature in its entirety, its body stretched into the darkness, its scales glinting like polished obsidian. Its eyes, however, were unmistakable. Two glowing orbs, each the size of a house, fixed on us with an intelligence that sent a shiver down my spine. "Ayla," Kairos said, his voice tight with fear. "What do we do?" I gripped the trident tighter, its warmth steadying me. "We face it." The Leviathan moved with a speed that belied its size, its massive body coiling like a spring before surging toward us. I raised the trident, and a burst of light shot from its tip, striking the creature's snout. It roared, the sound reverberating through the water like a thunderclap, but it didn't stop. "Kairos, get behind me," I shouted, though my voice was swallowed by the water. He didn't need to be told twice. As the Leviathan closed in, I swung the sword, its blade cutting through the water with a trail of light. The creature twisted, avoiding the strike, but I could feel its hesitation. It wasn't just the weapons that gave it pause, it was me. The whispers of the sea grew louder, filling my mind with images and sensations. I saw the Leviathan not as a monster, but as a guardian, its purpose to test those who sought the temple. It wasn't trying to kill us, it was trying to see if we were worthy. "Ayla," Kairos's voice was frantic. "Do something." I closed my eyes, letting the whispers guide me. The trident and sword were more than weapons. They were extensions of myself, tools to channel the power of the sea. I focused on that power, letting it flow through me until I felt as vast and ancient as the Leviathan itself. When I opened my eyes, the creature was inches away, its jaws wide enough to swallow us whole. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached out with my mind, not to fight, but to understand. "I am Ayla," I thought, the words echoing in the water. "Daughter of the waves. I seek the Temple of the Tides not for power, but for balance. Let me pass." For a moment, the Leviathan was still. Then it let out a low, rumbling sound that I felt more than heard. Its massive body began to shift, coiling around us in a spiral that left just enough space for us to move forward. "It's letting us go," Kairos asked, his voice trembling. "It's testing us," I said, my voice steady. And we passed. The Leviathan's eyes remained on us as we swam toward the temple, its gaze heavy with something I couldn't quite name. Respect. Curiosity. Whatever it was, I knew we hadn't seen the last of it. The Temple of the Tides was even more awe-inspiring up close. Its walls were covered in carvings that told the story of the ancient pact, a tale of two gods, one from the east and one from the west, who had once united to protect the seas. But something had gone wrong. The pact had been broken, and the seas had been divided ever since. "This is it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "This is where it all began." Kairos was silent, his eyes wide as he took in the temple's grandeur. "Do you think the gods know we're here?" "They will," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was a good thing. We swam through the temple's entrance, the water inside calm and still. The air was thick with the scent of salt and something else, something ancient and powerful. The whispers of the sea were deafening now, guiding us toward a chamber at the temple's heart. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with statues of gods and spirits from both pantheons. At its center was a pedestal, and on that pedestal was a scroll, its surface glowing with the same blue light as the carvings outside. "The pact," I said, my voice trembling. I reached for the scroll, but before I could touch it, the water around us began to churn. The statues came to life, their stone eyes glowing as they stepped down from their pedestals. "Ayla," Kairos said, his voice tight with fear. "What's happening?" "They're guardians," I said, gripping the trident and sword tightly. "They won't let us take the pact without a fight." The statues moved with a speed that belied their size, their stone weapons gleaming in the dim light. I swung the sword, its blade cutting through one of the statues with ease, but there were too many of them. "We can't fight them all," Kairos shouted, dodging a blow from a statue's massive hammer. "We don't have to," I said, my mind racing. "We just have to reach the scroll." I focused on the whispers of the sea, letting them guide my movements. The trident and sword were extensions of myself, their power flowing through me as I fought my way toward the pedestal. The statues were relentless, but I was faster, my movements fueled by a strength I didn't know I had. Finally, I reached the pedestal. The scroll was within reach, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. But as I reached for it, a voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. "Who dares to seek the pact?" I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, its form shifting between that of a man and a wave. It was the spirit of the sea, the same one who had guided us earlier. "I do," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "I am Ayla, daughter of the waves. I seek to restore balance to the seas." The spirit studied me for a moment, its eyes glowing with an ancient light. "The pact is not easily mended. Are you prepared to face the consequences?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I am." The spirit stepped aside and I reached for the scroll. As soon as my fingers touched it, a surge of power shot through me, filling my mind with images and sensations. I saw the seas as they once were, united, harmonious, and I saw the moment they were torn apart. But before I could fully understand what I was seeing, the chamber began to shake. The statues crumbled, their forms dissolving into dust, and the water around us began to churn. "Ayla," Kairos shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the water. "What's happening?" "The pact," I said, my voice trembling. "It's awakening." The light from the scroll grew brighter, filling the chamber with a blinding glow. I could feel the power of the seas flowing through me, their voices merging into a single, deafening roar. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the temple. The world around me was vast and endless, a sea of stars stretching in every direction. I floated in the void, the trident and sword still in my hands, their light mingling with the glow of the cosmos. The whispers of the sea were gone, replaced by a profound silence that seemed to echo with the weight of eternity. "Where am I?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You are in the heart of the primordial sea," a voice replied, deep and resonant. It was the same voice I had heard in the temple, the voice of the spirit who had guided me. I turned to see her standing before me, her form shimmering like the surface of the water. Her eyes were ancient and wise, filled with the knowledge of countless ages. "The pact is more than a scroll," she said, her voice echoing through the void. "It is a bond, a promise made by the gods to protect the seas." But their pride and jealousy tore it apart. Now the seas are divided and the world suffers for it. I understand, I said, though my voice trembled. But how do I restore it? The spirit smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. You already have. By proving your worth to the Leviathan, by facing the guardians of the temple, and by embracing your true self, you have shown that you are worthy of the pact. But to restore it, you must confront the gods themselves. As she spoke, the void around us began to shift. The stars faded, replaced by the image of two figures standing atop the waves. Poseidon and Susanoo, their forms towering and terrible, their weapons crackling with divine energy. They are here, the spirit said, and they will not give up their power easily. The void dissolved, and I found myself standing on the surface of the sea, the storm raging around me. Poseidon and Susanoo stood before me, their eyes blazing with fury. You dare to challenge us, mortal? Poseidon roared, his voice shaking the very air. I am no mortal, I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. I am Ayla, daughter of the waves, and I seek to restore the pact that you have broken. Susanoo laughed, a sound like thunder. The pact is gone, child. The seas belong to us, and we will not share them. I raised the trident and sword, their light cutting through the darkness. The seas belong to no one. They are a gift, a force of life that must be protected. If you cannot see that, then you are not fit to rule them. The gods hesitated, their eyes narrowing as they studied me. For a moment, I thought they might strike me down, but then something shifted. The storm began to calm, the waves stilling as if the sea itself was holding its breath. You speak with the voice of the primordial sea, Poseidon said, his voice softer now. How is this possible? Because she is the bridge, the spirit said, her form appearing beside me. The child of two pantheons, born to unite what was divided. She is the guardian of the seas, and you will heed her words. The gods exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. Then slowly they lowered their weapons. Very well, Susanoo said, his voice grudging. We will listen. The spirit guided us to the temple where the scroll lay waiting. As I touched it, the light from the trident and sword merged with its glow, filling the chamber with a blinding radiance. The whispers of the sea returned, their voices merging into a single harmonious song. The pact is restored, the spirit said, her voice filled with satisfaction. The seas are one again. I felt a surge of power as the pact took hold, its energy flowing through me and into the world around us. The storm above us faded, replaced by a calm, clear sky. The waves stilled, their surface smooth as glass. Poseidon and Susanoo bowed their heads, their pride humbled. You have done what we could not, Poseidon said, his voice filled with respect. The seas are in your hands now, Ayla. Protect them well. I will, I said, my voice steady. When we returned to the village, the storm was gone. The villagers emerged from their shelters, their faces filled with awe as they looked out at the calm sea. Ayla, old man Hiroshi called, his voice filled with relief. You did it. I smiled, though my heart was heavy with the weight of my new responsibility. The seas are safe for now. Kairos stood beside me, his eyes filled with pride. You were amazing, he said. But this is only the beginning, isn't it? I nodded. The gods may have accepted the pact, but there will always be those who seek to disrupt the balance. My work is far from over. As I gazed out at the horizon, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The seas were calm, the world was safe, and I had found my place in it. But somewhere, deep in the back of my mind, I could feel a new disturbance brewing. The whispers of the sea were quiet now, but they would return. And when they did, I would be ready. The end.